Hi, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Risk, where our mission is to engage, inspire, and empower the global community of risk practitioners. I'm your host, Naveen Agarwal, and today I'm really excited to welcome my guest, Edward Ball. He's a manager at RQM Plus, and we'll talk a little bit about his background and what he does. But it's really a great pleasure for me to welcome Ed, mainly because I've been engaging with him for a couple of years now online on LinkedIn, and also met him in person at a recent risk management conference in Amsterdam. And I'm really impressed with Ed's ability to look at things at a deeper level, engage in a very thought-provoking conversation, and beyond anything else, his interesting perspective on risk management. So I hope to talk about those topics with Ed today. With that, Ed, it's a real pleasure to welcome you to the show. How are you today?
Thank you very much for having me, Naveen. I'm well, and I think based on that, I should get you to write all of my introductions.
Oh, you're so welcome. But Ed, I'm really curious though. Your title says you are a manager of intelligence and strategic execution. Tell us a little bit about what that involves. Give us a flavor of some of the work you do.
Okay, so I work for RQM Plus, and we're contract research organization, full service partner supporting everything from innovation to well-established technologies in the MedTech sector, providing comprehensive solutions to our clients across the product and different products, different life cycle stages. And my role within the organization is predominantly, but not solely, but predominantly regulatory intelligence, how that affects our clients, how that affects our approaches, our methods, our processes that we have for achieving and delivering output, like deliverables in terms of certain reports or things like that, and how it affects our outlook in terms of a strategy, in terms of is there a change in needs for our clients that we can try and address? Is there something we can do? Is there a upcoming regulations that we need to be abreast of to make sure that our internal teams are aware of them and are trained on them, so we can then support clients if they then come to us with that need and ask for that help. So there's a lot of digesting of information, a lot of filtering, a lot of analysis.
Yeah. So you're like kind of eyes and ears of your organization. You look ahead, what's happening in the outside world, understand it, and bring it inside, so you can serve your customers, right? Great. So guys, as you are settling down, my guest today is Ed Ball, and we're going to talk about what's happening in the regulatory world, and as well as some risk management related topics. Now, Ed, recently you came back from the RAPS Euroconvergence Conference. I'm sure you saw the latest, talked to a lot of people. What's happening in Europe from a regulatory point of view? Tell us the latest.
Okay, so RAPS Euroconvergence. I think this was my third visit to that conference. I like it. I think it's a good conference. It's good for networking. We had about 3 days or 3 and a bit days in Brussels, over 1,000 delegates from manufacturers, from health authorities, notified bodies, the European Medicines Agency. So that mix gives you a real good opportunity to hear different perspectives, hear different thoughts and opinions, to network and just have those discussions, so that next time you have a more specific conversation, you are able to tap into some of those connections and talk to those people and try and get an inside track on, I'm being asked this, why is this, where's this coming from, what's the point of this, etc. So from that point of view, it's a really good conference, and I do enjoy it. And in terms of my role, it's a really good conference because I hear lots of things and speak to lots of people and make lots of connections.
Yeah.
And the more connections that you have, the more people in your network, the net gets cast a little bit further, and you can pull in lots more information. So you become aware of, other people become aware of papers or articles or guidance that they can share, and then I can see it, and then I can, oh, that's of interest. That'd be really helpful for our team. So that's really valuable insight or really valuable analysis in this paper, etc. So it really does help my day-to-day.
Yeah. So what are some of the key themes there that stood out to you in this conference?
Okay. So for context, it's a conference that addresses pharma and medical devices and IVDs. Most of it, certainly on the MedTech side of it, the devices and IVD side, most of it is European focused, not exclusively, most of it. Mm-hmm. One element that sort of straddled global perspectives was AI. It's probably going to be no surprise to you or any of the audience that AI was up there in terms of one of the more frequent topics discussed. And it was discussed both in terms of devices containing or being made of artificial intelligence or machine learning, and also the use of AI platforms or tools or anything like that to help with processes, to help with quality systems, to help with crafting regulatory documents, etc. And so on that, the latter of those, there were quite a few talks around how to use it and how to get the best out of it. There was also, I noticed, certainly based on my last few visits, that there was a significant rise in the number of software as a service exhibitors within the exhibition hall, and lots of those were starting to talk about their use of AI and how they did this and did that, etc. It's not going away. I don't think anyone thinks it's going away, but it's how we use it. It's how we bring it in and how we use it sensibly, acknowledging the benefit. I mean, I'm about risk management, so it's about acknowledging the benefits and acknowledging the risk of it. And there are benefits to using it, certainly.
And, we are hearing that even FDA has started using an AI system to assist in the review process. And it's called ELSA. We are hearing some news about it. And that reminds me to ask you, I know you spent several years at the MHRA and you have deep understanding of how these agencies work. What is your take on the use of AI in that environment?
Well, so I will make no claims about being an AI specialist whatsoever. But the way I approach lots of things, I just try to simplify it. And AI is only as good as its inputs. And so certainly from a competent authority's perspective, when you're dealing with inputs that there is uncertainty around the quality and the content of those inputs, then that uncertainty then gets carried across, if not amplified, in the outputs. So all of these things need to be used with caution and understanding of what could happen. And there were a couple of examples from competent. There was at least one example I can think of specifically, where a competent authority presented on their use of AI within their trending of adverse events and vigilance reports, etc., which was really interesting to see how they were doing that and what they were getting the system to look for, like how it was picking up on things and how they were using it to identify things that were potentially miscoded or misclassified, and they were getting to help them filter some of the things, some of the trends that they were showing up, and to pick out some of the more significant things to concentrate on. But then the flip side, me being me and asking the questions, I was very curious to know, okay, well, if you're doing this, and we've heard in other places that other authorities are doing that, are you talking to one another? Are you sharing the outputs of this and then working towards making things better and more consistent? And you wouldn't be surprised to hear that the answer was a bit vague and sketchy.
It's a shame. Bit too early to tell. For sure. I think you bring up a good point there, because especially your point about the inputs. And I've personally started experimenting with an LLM, ChatGPT, which is the most popular one, open source. And I've been looking at adverse events data. And you can learn a lot, but you have to be aware of exactly what you're doing and validate the data each time that it's the right data. You have the right number of columns, right number of rows, anything missing, what are the assumptions. So that's why we cannot let go of our critical thinking, right? That's the whole point. So Go ahead, Ed. In this presentation, you mentioned that they shared some examples. Did anything stand out to you in terms of the use of AI in that environment?
No more than what I just covered in terms of how they were identifying trends and helping to correct coding, because they were using IMDRF code. It was part of a discussion on IMDRF codes in complaints. I was going to come back to the IMDRF coding piece in one of my other discussion points.
Let's talk about that, because that is also, I think the practice varies across our industry. Some people are doing it, some are not doing it. For those who may not be aware of the IMDRF codes, let's set the stage right. What are those codes and why they are useful?
So one of the big themes of risk-related themes that I pulled together was post-market surveillance. And I think there's this, it depends who you ask, but I get the impression that people think it's really easy and really well known and that we shouldn't spend too much time talking about it, or people are extremely scared of it because they think it's this brand new thing that they've now got to deal with. Mm-hmm. Whereas I'm thinking, well, I've been doing post-market surveillance for the entirety of my career, and I'm now 20-something years into my medical devices career. So it's not new, certainly not new, and it's not scary. It's just knowing what to do and how, but more importantly, why. And why are we doing it? It's because we're looking to see, is our device still performing as intended, and is it safe? And that's the key question we're trying to ask. So we need to know what information we need to monitor and gather and then analyze to help us answer those questions. And I actually was part of a session on trending, on trend reporting. That was the hook, was trend reporting, because that's the regulatory requirement in the EU and the UK. But we came at it from the point of view of, well, trend reporting is an output. What you really need to be focusing on is trending. And trending requires an understanding of what questions you're trying to answer. Mm-hmm. And therefore, what data do you need to look for, and how do you need to set up your system, your post-market surveillance activities, all those, what sources do you need to look for, how frequently that information is available, etc. And not until you've done that can you then start to build up, okay, these are the things I will then report to the regulatory authorities. And the IMDRF codes, and there are multiple different codes relating to investigations and clinical effects and all these other things. But they're now a mandatory requirement for vigilance reporting. Well, no, they're not a legally required requirement because they're not in the regulation, but they are in the templates that are used for vigilance reporting. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they become de facto required. And the authorities, as I mentioned, they are using those IMDRF codes for their trending. So they really are looking to see those codes. And it was interesting to see that, and I believe it was the specific authority I mentioned, they were applying the IMDRF code. They weren't leaving it up to the manufacturer's code. They were then making their own decision, whereas I know other authorities, they just go off whatever the manufacturer says is the IMDRF code. Mm-hmm. But I also know from my own experience, both working within a manufacturer and doing audits for manufacturers, that it's also extremely subjective in terms of how you come up with those codes.
And which code is applicable. Yeah,
it's the same issues that me as an outsider can look at and go, well, that they're all the same, and then they'll give it different codes with no explanation of why the codes are different.
But I think it's very important because we need to look at the data in a standardized way, and that's why these codes are important. So one thing that I've experienced, Ed, I don't know what your experience is, that generally the complaints handling the vigilance department is different from people who do risk management or post-market surveillance. And I have seen personally several examples where for MDR reporting, and my experience is mostly in the US, and FDA uses IMDRF codes as well. So people are reporting into those IMDRF codes for vigilance purposes, but in the risk management files, they're still using their non-standardized terms in the complaints handling system. And many times this creates a major discrepancy between trying to understand the external data and the internal data and the linkage between the two. So guys, if you're just joining, my guest today is Ed Ball, and we are talking about these topics related to risk management in the broader context of what's happening in the regulatory world. So I invite you to continue to share your comments and questions and participate in this discussion. So Ed, does that resonate with you, what I shared with you just now, my experience in the industry where there's a lot of gap in terms of even looking at the data in the standard way?
Definitely. That disconnect between risk management and certain parts of post-market surveillance, for sure. And so part of the messaging that we were trying to give from the panel I was part of was that trending is part of your quality management system and your risk management system and product management as a whole from a holistic perspective. It's not in isolation. It's not just a regulatory function. It's not this. It's part of everything. It's connected to all of it.
Yeah.
And the key to that is is that flow through of information. And in my roles previous to what I'm doing now, I was very comfortable with making sure that as part of design transfer, we would make sure we transferred the right information across from the risk management file into our complaint handling process. And then we had that consistency, but also we had that useful nomenclature for trending afterwards, so that when things came back, we had a place for it in our risk file. We knew exactly where it was in our risk file. It wasn't a subjective term. We had to work out which one it was. Also, it was an immediate flag for when there's a new hazard or a new failure or a new harm. And all those things piecing together helped the system work. Was it perfect? No. Was it prior to the widespread use of the IMDRF codes? Yes. But I think the use of those codes is very logical, extremely logical. The authorities really want them because it helps them. From my own point of view, I do wonder sometimes whether they go deep enough in their resolution for certainly for the device side, like the component, the failure side. And I do wonder whether in practice, a lot of manufacturers will have to add their own layer or layers of code on top of those IMDRF ones to make sure that they actually provide meaningful information when they're connected to their risk management file.
Well, I see this as trying to speak a language that all of us can understand. Because if we are coding a harm term in a non-standard way in one company versus another company, similar devices, patients are experiencing similar types of harms, but we are treating them differently, the data will be not clean or maybe diluted. But if you use a standard term for the same type of experience with a similar type of devices, I think it's reasonable to say that the data is cleaner and more reliable, and our trending and monitoring will help us discover these signals early on. Otherwise, I think we're going to be confused. So that is the relevance I see of using these standardized codes, which, to your point, have been in existence and adopted by regulatory authorities across the world for many, many years. They are not new. It's just that our complaints handling systems have evolved over time to include many non-standard terms. I've even seen multiple terms used for the same harm, because over time, the symptoms that were being reported to the complaints department were different, and they were coding them differently. So they created new terms. And in one experience, 30% of the new complaints in the last few months were coded as other, because they couldn't find a new term to put into that. So I cannot emphasize enough, and I've written about this in IMDRF.
Yeah, those kind of catch-all ones.
So it's not actionable. So Ed, I will pivot a little bit, because speaking of language, you are one person that stands out in my mind who pays particular attention to how language is used in defining requirements, because it creates a context for common understanding and action. Can you give an example of where it has kind of stood out to you, where there is a particular problem in our risk management world in understanding a basic concept where, language seems to be playing a role?
Okay. If you allow me, I'll do two.
Sure.
One both related to risk, but one also connected to another theme within the RAPS Euro discussions. So the first, still on the post-market surveillance topic, is certainly from the EU MDR and IVDR world. We have this phrase of indicators and threshold values that are used within the decisions on post-market surveillance, on PMCFs, on trend reporting, etc. That is being interpreted as it has to be a number, it has to be a rate of occurrence, it has to be this. And my point is always, well, when I'm turning a corner, and I'm going to use British English at this point, when I'm turning a corner in my car and I flick on the indicator to say I'm turning left, and my indicator flashes, it's a signal. So an indicator doesn't have to be a number, it doesn't have to be any particular rate. An indicator can just be this has happened. So you mentioned that catch-all bucket of other in terms of harms, and we talked about having that good connection of risk assessment content to the complaint handling process, and that connection allows you to then identify new things. The identification of new things is an indicator to me. It doesn't have to be it's breached this 100 per million whatever rates or anything like that. It's just something happened, and these are the kind of things that could happen that we want to be aware of, and we will take action when those things are happening. So just that, breaking that down and saying it doesn't have to be numbers, and sometimes the authorities focus on it being a number and they want everybody to stick numbers on everything. It's not quite appropriate in this, and we see the same with the benefit risk ratio. I didn't intend to talk about benefit risk ratio.
Yeah.
But the phrase benefit risk ratio is used in the medical device regulations and IVD regulations. It doesn't really, maybe it meant a ratio, but it can't really mean a ratio because it's illogical for so many reasons. We haven't got time to go into the
sure. No, but that's a great point. They want to see a comparison between benefits and risks, and ratio is one way of doing that if the quantitative information and method is reliable. But that's not the only way. This is an excellent example. Any other example that comes to mind when it comes to language? Yeah,
so the connection here is from a post-market surveillance. You're monitoring, you're looking at things, and one of the things you should be monitoring is the state of the art. And the concept of the state of the art is key in terms of risk acceptability in terms of how you've actually designed your product. It's key to that benefit risk discussion. It's key to from a regulatory perspective, because both in Europe and the UK and anywhere else that uses versions of the IMDRF's essential principles, the first one of those requirements is based around taking consideration of the state of the art when you're designing your device and evaluating whether the benefits are outweighing the risks. So it's a fundamental piece of everything we do to demonstrate a device is safe and performs as intended. But yet, and I'm making no claims to be a grammar expert at all. Anyone that knows me will back that up. But when I saw what I now know to be an incorrect transcription of the definition from ISO 14971 into the European MDCG guidance, then it made me look and go, oh, why have they used hyphens between the word state of the art? Why have they hyphenated that term? Is that different? So I went on a little quest to find out and learned a lot about English grammar, which puts my education to shame. But I then realized, okay, well, without the hyphens, it's a noun, it's a thing. And with the hyphens, it's a compound adjective. It's a describing word.
Interesting.
Which then really emphasized, okay, well, the usage in the regulations and in the essential requirements, essential principles is without hyphens. It's just state of the art, 4 words. And that is the noun. That's the context. So it's the what is out there. And then when we talk about this is the latest and greatest, this standard is the state of the art standard for risk management, then we can put the hyphens in. We're describing something as being the best of the best, the latest and greatest. But when we're just talking about the context, which is how the regulations use it, then we're talking about the landscape, the context in which we're operating. And so when we look at the requirements that reference state of the art, they always talk about it in terms of understanding it. So evaluating and characterizing it, and then making your decisions when considering and in the context of. So it's not saying you have to meet it or comply with it, because that's just illogical. It's saying you need to know it to then be able to use it in your decision-making process. And what I did see at RAPS Europe,
interesting,
tying this all back to your agenda of talking about the conference, was lots of discussions that originate really from the subjectivity in the regulations and the interpretation and implementation of the regulations in the EU. And I did note that in a lot of those conversations, the use of state of the art was better from my perspective, in that they were using it more consistently with what the regulations say, and people weren't carrying across those transcription errors that they'd taken from a guidance document. They were going back to the original text and going, okay, well, it's this, and they were using it in the right context on the manufacturer's side. But when we came to the notified bodies and the authorities, they were still talking about meeting the state of the art, which I felt was worrying, that we were still having this difference of understanding of what the regulations actually say. And it was coming from those that are then enforcing the compliance and doing the assessments, etc. So I think we've still got some way to go on that.
Yeah, we still got some ways to have these conversations and drive a consensus, because let's also put this in perspective for those who may still be struggling with this concept. Very important concept. The ISO 14971 regulations don't say state of the art means the most advanced or sophisticated technology, right? It just means what is generally acknowledged as a best practice. So your conversation is so illuminating to me. Your perspective is so illuminating to me. It makes a lot of sense. And if one party is expecting the manufacturer to meet the highest bar ever, well, that's a different perspective than what is actually required. So I'm hoping that our colleagues from the notified body spectrum will also engage in these conversations. They haven't done so far, and I invite them to participate, share their perspective, opinions, and together we should create a common understanding. So Ed, I know we are coming to the end of our 30 minutes. It has been already a very fascinating conversation, and these topics, we could talk about them for hours for those of us who are so passionate about it. But I'm going to give you a couple of minutes, Ed, to collect your thoughts and share some key takeaway points that we can all remember after our conversation today. In the meantime, I'm going to share a few announcements with our colleagues here. First of all, guys, those of you who are joining for the first time, we do this every week on Fridays. You're welcome to join. They're very casual conversations about risk management related topics, and also broader topics that are related to risk management. So we don't particularly talk about ISO 14971 all the time, but we put this in context because it's related to many other aspects of the work we do in our industry. So you're also welcome to join me as a guest. It requires no preparation. There are no slides, no presentations. All you have to do is just be willing to share your own perspective. And honestly, I believe that all of us have something to share, regardless of how many years we have spent in the industry. We have a new perspective. We have an opinion. Opinions are welcome in this conversation because this is how we discuss, debate, and understand. So if you're interested in becoming a speaker, coming to my show, please reach out and we will find a time. The second announcement relates to a post-market surveillance workshop that I offer. This is very pertinent to the conversation today. It's coming up. The next session is coming up in early September. It's a 4-hour session via Zoom. And we talk about regulatory requirements first. And then we talk about how to do signal detection, signal evaluation, escalation, taking action, creating a process that will work for you, some best practices for implementation. So it's a how-to workshop. You will be doing a lot of work there, solving problems and working with other people in the group. So if you're interested in registration, please let me know and I'll share that information with you. With that, Ed, the floor is yours. Please share some key points for us.
Okay, thank you, Naveen. So I just wanted to pick up on one of the items you just covered there for the audience and say, well, keep learning. I love doing training like the sessions that Naveen just described and being in some of Naveen's sessions in the past. I love learning. And I love training because when you train, you learn as well. You learn from the people that are in the group because they have perspectives that I don't have. And once you identify those perspectives and understand them, then it just enhances your understanding of what's going on and what's needed and the different elements of the problem at hand. And then connected to that is ask questions. I mean, risk management is my core core subject, I guess, the thing that I like doing the most. That's nothing without asking questions. And actually, from one of the recent conferences, there was a session on the use of AI in risk management. And I was a bit concerned because the way it was pitched was this can help you with your risk analysis and you can just run these prompts and get all this information back. And I was concerned because that's my favorite bit of risk management is asking those questions and working it all out and doing the general brainstorming, doing the analysis of data, etc. For me, that's the most fun bits. But also asking questions, but creating a culture for your colleagues and peers to also ask questions. Make sure that people aren't afraid to ask questions, because without that, then things just grind to a halt. And then the last one, staying on the theme of asking questions, is build your PMS system to help you answer the questions that you need to answer for you, for your patients and your users and your customers, and for your organization and for your authorities and notified bodies and whoever else are interested. They will all have slightly different versions of questions or different questions completely, and you need to be able to answer all of them. So you need to build your system and the data collection and all the data requirements, etc., to be able to answer all of those questions and present the data that helps you answer those questions.
Nice. Well, thank you so much, Ed. Great points, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come to the show and share your insights. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for attending. Many of you show up week after week, and I appreciate that very much. You are so engaged, and that inspires me. So keep doing that. Reach out to me anytime if you have any feedback to share. This show is about all of us. It's for you. So the more I hear from you, the better it will be. With that, everybody, have a good weekend, and we will connect soon. Take care.